Welcome to our best practice series focused on storage as a service. In this conversation with Benjamin Henry, our field CTO at Komprise, we're going to cover a lot of topics about what is storage as a service, the role of intelligent data management and Komprise in the storage as a service model. But today, let's just jump right into what is it, why is it so important, and then we'll provide a few demonstrations.
Yeah, thanks, Darren. So before I get into what storage as a service is, we'll cover a little bit of history here of kind of how it came about. We have the constant argument of CapEx versus OpEx, capital expenditure versus operating expense, and how do you want to purchase your storage? Traditionally, you did purchase it. It was yours. It was typically a capital expense, and then you depreciated it over whatever your depreciation cycle is, commonly 3 or 5 years. The OpEx model came in. One, to get rid of those capital expenditures, but also to give you what you need when you need it. So you're not running around at the 11th hour saying, okay, my storage is at 85, 95, 99% consumed. You always had extra storage available. And that's the model that cloud vendors have adopted. And it's morphed into this storage as a service, which is a really great model. You need it, it's there. You want to change to a performance-based tier, you can go ahead and do that and check a box. You want to move it between regions, great. You set it up and you move it around. You replicate it. It's all there for you, but sometimes those come at a premium cost. And that's one of the areas I'm going to jump into with Komprise and how we can help you control some of those costs, get the right data in the right location so that you can put the hot data on a performance tier and put the cold data where it belongs. All right. So we talked about the CapEx, OpEx, we talked about the premium, and now we're going to jump into some more detail of what we're going to do to help you manage that environment. So I'm going to jump in and do it into the demo side of things right away. All right, so I'm going to start off here with our data storage page. I'm going to talk about the analytics. Analytics. You're going to hear me say that a lot. When I was responsible for a global footprint, it was always about the analytics and always about the money. Is how can we achieve our goals and still save money? So with the new data storage tab here, and as it continues to evolve, a lot of decisions can be driven right here from this page. So I've got a lot of things going on here, but I'm going to focus in on adding a few columns that I like to use to talk about what my data looks like. So over here, I'm going to click on the columns tab. By default, on the right-hand side, these are the default columns out of the box. I'm going to go ahead and drag over my directories. I'm going to drag over, let's see here, my items. Or here it is, went too far. I've already got my cold data. I can add in my modified percentages, my modified quantity. I can add in my data growth projections. I can add all those in here. Definitely, I would encourage you to go in here, play around, add the columns, set your values, and leverage the screen. And as a bonus, when you set the screen up the way you like it, it is tied to you. It's tied to your profile. So when you log in, it's your view. Someone else logs in, they have their view. And then on top of that, you can also extract this view. So you can extract this, you can model it, you can even send it as a report on a regular basis. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click save here. So right away, I can see here that I've got my field marketing share right here on top of my SVM. I can see that it has 607,000 directories, 6.1 million items. So I'm going to say this is a pretty dense folder based on the fact that it's only 273 terabytes. So that kind of starts to profile my data to let me know what it looks like. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move over and I'm going to start looking at some of my cold data structures versus the growth. So my cold data in this share accounts for almost 55% of the data in here. So I could actually shrink this share by almost 50% before I ever consider putting it on a performance tier of storage. Moving on from there, I'm going to talk a little bit how you're going to apply costs to these different shares, to the different storage environments to know, is it a right fit for moving into a certain cost model? How do I do that? How do I put a cost associated with this? Okay, well, on our plan tab, we have our data donut, and then we have our cost model. So in here, you get to plug in your storage costs. So you can plug in a storage hardware cost, and it's charged. The way it's set up here is it's charged per terabyte per year. We're using industry standard values that are kind of averaged across many different platforms, but I would encourage you to look at your storage costs and plug in the appropriate value. Backup costs. Sometimes you have a dedicated backup application, dedicated backup hardware. Sometimes you have replication of that hardware. Other times you're just doing a simple mirroring operation. So that would just be your storage costs times 2. Then you choose whether you're paying for backup software or not. You put in the value there, the number of copies you're keeping, and it'll give you an average of what you're paying per terabyte per year. You can also start modeling this if you want to tier first, which we talked about putting the right data at the right location before you go ahead and start using some of those performance tiers. So here you can put in your cloud costs, you can put in your Komprise cost, and you can put in any egress costs that you might have. So now you have a pretty detailed understanding of what your storage costs will look like, but not just on the page, but into reports. So let me go ahead and save this. And I'm going to look at my cost analysis based on the shares that are on my screen. And this is looking at all of the shares in my environment, but simply through this dropdown, I can choose how I want to model this data donut. And in this data donut, every time I model this, I can say all the shares that are in my plan. So I can create a plan to model this, and then I can act upon that plan simply by hitting the activate button. I can even choose specific shares. When I choose specific shares, I get a list of everything, and I get to choose how I want to model this. I'm going to leave it set to everything for my environment because that's what I'm really concerned about right now. So if I turn around and I say, I'm going to tier my data out, I'm going to tier my cold data off, I'm going to actually wind up with a $3.9 million savings over 3 years. And this is how much I'm going to reduce my capacity by. And that's significant. You know, 1.1 petabytes worth of reduction. If I start looking forward into looking at new vendors, new storage costs, I'm going to shrink that up front so I know what is my hot data, what's valuable to me, what needs to be on a performance tier, and then I can start judging where my data needs to go. All right. So now we've talked about the cost analysis from the data donut. I know what I'm going to spend, but how do I communicate this up the leadership? So we have these reports tabs over here. So I click on reports. It's going to load the report tab. In the report tab, I'm actually choosing the report called Showback. The Showback is a really great, sometimes 2 to 3 page report that gives me an idea from a leadership perspective, what I just showed you on the data donut. So in here, I'm going to choose the share. I'm going to just pick one in this scenario. Let's see, I'm going to choose the Azure. I'm going to choose the SMB one. I'm going to hit apply. And then I'm going to say download report. When I download that report, I'm going to actually see now values that are tied to just that one individual share, again, at a high level that's designed for leadership to show. So I can go to my leadership and say, hey, you know what? I want to tier off this data because it's costing us this much to host it in this environment per year. And most of it's cold. So if I shrink that, it'll give you the different categories and how you can shrink it. So 3 years and older counts for 14% of data, 2 to 3 years, almost another 14% of my data. And then my 1 to 2 year mark, another 27, call it 28% of my data. So a significant amount of this share can be reduced and tiered off the cold storage. So I can turn around and shrink that footprint and directly reduce my OpEx bill, which comes back to my storage as a service. So Darren, a lot of information packed into a very short window there, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, it's great, Benjamin. Thank you. So we're gonna dive into deep analytics and some queries and tagging concepts in our next session. It was a great overview of the concept, and hopefully folks will tune in and want to keep learning more.